Radio Legends, Chaos Chronicles. So, as promised, I was going to bring to you guys the John KILLICK podcast, which is exactly what we're doing today. And we're very lucky. If you guys don't know who John KILLICK is, he's the only person in Australian history to actually successfully escape via helicopter. But John has also had two other successful prison escapes, which we are very, very fortunate to be some of the only people to hear those stories here today. So that's what you will be hearing today, a little bit about John's past, and then obviously the stuff that we do know about, and then these other escapes that he hasn't really spoken about before. So rightio, let's get into it, legends.
All I have in this world is my laws, my word, and I don't break them for the moon.
All right, guys, so welcome back to another podcast. So today we've got John KILLICK, and John is a gentleman and is famous for the only person in Australian history to escape prison via helicopter. I shouldn't say that's not the only thing he's famous for, rather. And but yeah, we have John here today. So John, if you could introduce yourself, that'd be absolutely awesome, mate.
Look, it's a pleasure to be on. I love doing the podcast and getting across to people that it's not the way the media portray these things, and we don't glorify crime, and sometimes people get the wrong idea. They think in a podcast about crime, or interview people that have been in jail and that have written books, something that we're trying to glorify the crime, and we're not, because but my message has been for the last 11 years, and in fact, in my mind, a lot longer than that, that crime is wrong. Particularly, I was known as a bank robber, and I did rob a lot of banks over the years. In fact, I'm probably just as well known as Australia's first C-Day bandit, because I did rob a bank on changeover day on it was 14th of February 1966, when they changed over from to decimal currency from pound sterling to pence.
Wow.
And so that's going back a long way.
Currency, yep.
Yeah, and then 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Here's a guy that for 4 decades was robbing banks now, and a lot of escapes in between. Well, 5 attempts, but 3 of them successful from maximum security. So I got notoriety that I didn't want, and I've been trying since I got out about 11 years ago to get it across. I spoke the first 3 years, particularly. I worked with kids and spoke to a lot of kids that I felt were on the borderline of going the way I went, and I was able to talk. But it's very hard when you're only seeing these kids once a week, and they're getting with their peers the rest of the time. It's very hard. I really believe that people that are heading the wrong way, kids that haven't got mentors, and that they really need to be able to go to places where mentors can work with them full time, and the government won't put the money into this, and they should. And they should be using people like me, and there's a lot of people like me who've got the experience and prepared to work with these kids for practically nothing, but they don't do it.
Yeah,
The
that's
government
right,
won't do
correct.
it. They use and good intention people that graduate from uni, often young women but young guys too. That these kids just tread all over them. They won't listen to them. They will listen to guys like me, and they will listen to guys like Ron Isherwood and Bernie Matthews. Unfortunately, is dead, and Russell Mance has unfortunately passed. But these people, they did listen to. The kids
Rest
did
in
listen
peace,
to.
Russell.
Yeah, and look, it's a shame that the government just doesn't get it or doesn't want to get it. That people like me are really needed to talk to the kids that are on the wrong side of the track or heading on the wrong side of the track. And we don't glorify crime when we say how bad it is. And you know yourself that particularly now, so when I first went to jail, you didn't have the drugs. They weren't a problem. Now you've got drugs, which are a real problem, because if you get young kids go into jail, if they're not on drugs, you can bet they'll be on drugs when they come out. That's how bad it is, And
I guarantee it. And this is actually something I want.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted to touch on you with. Yeah, just because I know, right? Just from like the first time me going to prison, the older blokes like yourself, like I hold in high regard. Do you know what I mean? Because they were definitely their own, like a different quality of criminal, right? And the reason I say this is because everything and every like older criminal that I learnt off was told me about how they were into crime before drugs were
Um,
involved.
Look, it's a pleasure to do it, and I try and do these podcasts when I can. And thanks. Also, I think people should know that I do help kids overseas, and you've contributed to that, and I appreciate that because it's pretty hard for me to do it on my own. And so when people that do help, I like to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to help, and yeah, so I'll definitely touch on that. So, like what I was saying before we got cut off was, you know, a lot of the older guys taught me that they were criminals before drugs were a thing with criminals, and so the whole and I seen it. Do you know what I mean? I see it now, and I seen it then. Early 2000s. My first ever sentence was the year 2000, but 25 years ago now. But even the quality of criminals then was different than the quality of criminals now, and I think that drugs play a big part in that. Do you
I
agree?
think I think everybody knows that, and the thing is that I went to jail when I was 17. My mother died. She actually killed herself, and I left home the day she died. I was in shock, and I wasn't. I was a bookish kid. I
Oh,
had no.
sorry.
Yeah, I had no inclination about crimes. I didn't know anything about it, and within 6 months I was in jail. But the thing that hooked up with guys a bit older who taught me how to survive on the street and whatnot. But when I went to jail at 17 in Long Bay, shouldn't have been there. I learned pretty fast that that criminals have got a code of ethics, particularly in those days, old school. And it was a criminal code that was very well known, in Italy and England and America. The hardened criminals had a code that you abided by, and it virtually was the opposite code to what we live by in a free world where people are honest. Because the code was that if you see somebody getting bashed, you walk away. If you give the person up to the authorities, they'll turn on you, and you'll have to go on protection, or they'll bash you. We were taught it's okay to steal. The systems are ripping everybody off, and it was okay. And so I just decided, look, if I'm going to be a crim, I'm going to go for the money and start robbing banks. And so I started robbing banks in the mid '60s, and I was one of the first in Australia to do it. There were a few, but not many that did it. And actually, the armed robbery squad that had reunion recently just said that I was the guy who got the ball really rolling with doing multiple armed robs. That's not something I'm proud of. And as I said, I did that on C Day on 14 February 1966. And
Yeah.
it just went on from there that when I got into trouble, it was me against the system. A lot of bad things happened in the system. I got bashed pretty badly down in Melbourne. I was there when they hanged Ronald Ryan. I always felt that he was the wrong guy, that they hanged the wrong guy. That's the last
Yeah.
execution in Australia. I was there for that. And I
Yeah.
spent 4 years in H Division trying to make an escape, where I actually took over the wing and took a gun off one of the officers, and 18 carloads of SWAT team came and blocked us off, and had explosive and shot out the lights, and I wouldn't survive the day if I did that. But the thing is, I always felt it was fate that I survived all those things. I've been shot at 9 times, and they've all missed, and I just feel that it was fate. It was meant for me to survive, and go on and tell the way it was. And I've got a photographic memory on this stuff, and I relate it in books, and I've even said in the books, if anybody can prove anything I've written in the books is wrong or erroneous, then I'll be happy to know. But nobody's been able to do it because I stick with the truth. Unlike a lot of books on so-called true crime where they get it wrong, and particularly in the media. And one of the reasons I wrote the books is because there was so much misinformation in the media, and particularly about Lucy and I when that escape happened. And so I wanted to set the record straight about all of it, and which I managed to do. And I've managed to build up a pretty decent background. I speak at universities. I help kids overseas, and with the money I get from books, I do talks. And I really haven't put a foot wrong in that 11 years that I've been out. But I look back and realise the years I've wasted, and you can't do anything about it. And I've said to people say to me, look at all the damage you've done, and I accept that. I've worked with psychs, and if you run into a bank with a balaclava waving a gun, then you are hurting people. It mightn't seem you are. I always feel I'm only bluffing, but they don't know that. And the psychological damage to some people, you could even ruin their lives. And I've accepted that.
PTSD and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I accept this. I accept it. And there's nothing you can do. And that's what I say. There's nothing you can do to take back what you've done. All you can do is try and do good things. And do some good things and try and make up for it and try and balance the ledger. And that's what I try to do. That's what I try to do. And there are others like me that are doing the same thing. And I think the authorities need to realise that we're genuine. I've been going a long time doing this now, and that give us a go at the kids. Let us talk.
Yeah.
The kids I talk to, they do listen to me. And that's a thing that you don't often get when people leave. When I talk to university students, law students, they come to me, and we have Q&As, and they come to me and they say, "We're so glad, John, that you were able to give us a lecture today, and we could ask you questions because we never get this before." See, all they used to get before, and it was good stuff. They'd get it from ex-judges, ex-police officers, or forensic guys who taught them well. They taught them that side of the law, but they didn't teach them the other side of the law. They didn't teach them about that. And so they went in blind when they were going to become parole officers, police officers, prison officers, whatever they might be. They didn't know the other side. They didn't know how the other side works. So they've gone in, and that's what we were dealing with for decades and decades. Now you've got people like me talking and telling them about and answering questions, doing Q&As, being able to get it across to these law students. Look, this is... we're dealing with a two-tiered system. We're dealing with a two-tiered system because there is a privilege in law to certain people who get an easy run, and we all know it. And I was able to point this out.
Yeah,
and
correct.
they don't like you doing it, but that's a fact. That's a fact. You've only got to look at court cases and see what happens. And quite often you'll see someone high profile or something that they just get an easy run. They seem to get out of it.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too, like I noticed it in my time, the difference in like the people that have to go and use legal aid in the Australian court system compared to people that can afford a QC. There's a big difference, mate. And like generally not doing prison time,
Well, we're not. I've gone on myself and gone down when I shouldn't have, and with legal aid. And I'm not saying these people are incompetent. Some of them are bloody hard workers, but they're overloaded. They get too many cases to handle. They can't spend the time. Legal aid gets appointed so many cases that, whereas the guys that have got a lot of money, they get the best there is. They pay them, and they spend money, and that lawyer does everything he can to help that bloody person because he's getting paid big bucks. And when they're getting $10,000 a day, some of these barristers, of course they're going to try and get them up. And they've got the contacts. They might even have lunch with a judge that day. I'm sorry, but it does happen. It does happen. And
absolutely it does, yeah.
And when a judge sums up in a trial, the judge can make or break the case the way they do it, just by looks, nuances. That they can go in heavy for the prosecution and go in light for the defence and make it look like, and the jury picks up that the judge thinks he's guilty. I mean, look, I've seen it. I've been a victim of it. And I know how it works.
Yep, me too. Like I've had very recently, I had this bullshit court case going on, and so when the court case started, I was actually in prison, and so I was via tally court because it was during COVID, and anyway, it was backed up for ages. But the judge at the time used to be my barrister, my legal aid barrister.
There you go. Yeah.
And
Unbelievable.
I was like, this this is a conflict of interest. You cannot. And the truth is, my girlfriend at the time used to work for him, and so did her mum. And so, rest in peace, my son passed away in 2006, and he was at the funeral sitting four seats away from me. He was still a barrister at the time, no inkling of being a judge. But he was tried to tell me it wasn't a conflict of interest. And I was like, it most definitely is. You were at my son's funeral. We've gone through grief together. How is this not a conflict of interest?
Yeah, of course.
And he
Yeah.
hated me at this time because me and this girl were not together anymore. And like he was just the hanging judge from hell. And I had to actually bring it to my social media because no one was listening to me. And guaranteed, when I brought the story the next day when I come into court, because I said, if I get locked up tomorrow, yous know that it's been done illegally. Like, this is a conflict of interest. And then guarantee the next day I go into court after doing that story, the judge is nowhere to be seen and never on that case again.
Well, that you had a bit of guts and you got up and did it. Most people wouldn't do that, and I think you had to do it. And but this happens so often, Steve. Most of the judges, nearly all of them have been lawyers, right? And some of them have been prosecutors, lawyers. Now the thing is that in my time, before they brought in interviewed actual on film, recorded electronic interviews. Before that, the greatest weapon of police, apart from bashing you and bashing confessions out of people, but some people you couldn't bash confess out of, so they used to verbal them. And the verbal was a huge weapon. They would just get in, type up a statement where you're allegedly confessing, saying you did this, you got on a plane there, you did this, you did that, you went in, you did that, and you dumped the car there, all the facts they knew. Then about six of them would sign it. You wouldn't sign it. You'd go into court, your barrister would, or your lawyer would say, Your Honour, he didn't sign it. And the cops would say, well, what they do, criminals, they change their mind. They confess and then they realise, they're getting in trouble and they change. But we all signed it, Your Honour. And the judge stands, well, it's bloody verbal, but he's been through it himself and probably defended these things before. He gets up and lets it go. So you go into jail and you're waiting sometimes up to 2 years in those days on trial on heavy stuff. And even if you beat it, you get out 2 years later, you've probably lost your marriage is stuffed. It was just such a tough system. Now it's different, I think, with electronic recordings. But the thing is that I think what we've got to realise now is, as you said, it still gets down with drugs and stuff like that. People still get, they change the bail laws. Our jails are absolutely overflowing with mostly people that are in for petty stuff. They would either get out and do more time than what they would have got anyway, or else they'll beat it. But the thing is that the bail laws have changed now. It's just by weak politicians changing it all the time by pressure from the media. Tough on crime, and they think it's a vote getter. Yeah. And, the bail laws now have got to the stage where you have to show it's in the interest of the community for you to be given bail. That's bullshit because, it goes back hundreds of years. The thing about bail is when you're arrested and you're on remand, then you have to be considered innocent until you're proven guilty. That's a fact. That's how the law, it's always operated that way. But now they've changed it. You have to show that it's in the interest of the community for you to be released. Now, what happens, some rich guy's got 10 companies, he's a millionaire, suddenly gets charged with something heavy. He gets a QC, and the QC knows the judge, gets up and said, Your Honour, this man employs 300 people. We realise the charge is serious, but he is definitely vehemently denies the guilt, and we would like bail because he's got 300 people working for him. And the judge said, well, it's in the interest of the community, we'll give him bail. So he gets out. Some kid goes up, never had a job, bit of a history of drugs, probably can't even read or write, charged with something petty, but how is it in the interest of the community to let him out? It isn't. He's not going to be any use to society, so stuff it, we'll leave him in jail. It's not in there. This is where we've reached. This is the point we've reached because of our weak politicians that have allowed the laws to just change to the extent where, it favours, it more than ever, it favours the rich because, when when you've got a QC that walks into a court or a senior counsel that's $10,000 or $12,000 a day and says to a magistrate, "I want this man bailed," the magistrate's often overawed by him and gives it to him.
Yep.
You know
Yep.
yourself how it works.
Yep, and this is exactly right. Yep. So, and this is what I say as well. Like, you know, and I would never ever take the side of it's just an easy blame for the politicians to put it on the police. The police are not giving these people bail, and then the judges are letting them out, and then the opposite's happening, like you just said. And now it's the same thing in Victoria. All of our prisons are at absolute maximum capability.
Yep.
And in the last 3 years, we've built maybe two at least prisons.
Yep.
And that's not the answer. We know that's not the answer. Like there's no rehabilitation in prison, especially these days. Like,
it's not.
you know, people have serious drug problems, and like there is no help for these people inside. So all they're doing, as you know, the College of Knowledge, they're getting in with very, very little knowledge as young men about crime and getting out with all these new knowledges on all these new crimes. That's always been the way, but like it's just like you said, like it's weak politicians that make it like it is right now.
Absolutely. And the thing is too that we're following America, you know, that with the privatisation of jails, there's quite a few in New South Wales now too. But the thing is that it's like anything else. Post offices, they're closing down post offices if they're not making a profit. And they were built, post offices are built for a service to people. We just had ours closed recently, and it serves all the pensioners in the area. And it's half of them, and you can't even get anywhere to get their pension or even check the suit because they don't use mobile phones or anything like that. So it's getting down to privatisation now. It's been proven in America that when they build jails over there, even in the middle of nowhere, they suddenly find a way to fill them up. You know, all of a sudden, judges start stopping bail here, there. You know, kids start getting thrown into jail, and bonds start getting broken. And it's the same here. We find a way to fill our jails up, and we've got. What is the point of having a jail if it has to show a profit? How the hell does that work? You know, the government's got a responsibility to the community to keep people in jail who they feel should be in jail. It's got nothing to do with profit or loss. It should never be about profit or loss. And it really just sickens me to see it, that privatisation, and you've got organisations running it, and they've proven that quite often they fall down on a job. They fall down to the private jails because, you know, it's a government jails, and government jails have been pretty slack. We all know that too. We know when Andrews is like with H division and all that. I was there. We know what can happen. But the thing is, at least haven't got the pressure to show a profit at the end of the year. Now, if you're running a jail and you know it's a private jail and you've got to show a profit, then you're just going to cut here, you're going to cut there, you're going to cut there, you're going to have to. And where's the first way you're going to cut? You're going to cut staff. You're going to cut hours. So a lot of these jails in New South Wales, I don't know what's happened down there, but a lot of the jails in New South Wales, they're getting closed down bloody 20 hours a day. You know, there's not enough staff. Some wings, they're not opening, you know, they're just not getting out. People aren't getting out because
exact same things happening here, mate, across the whole state. So like a lot of people are getting locked down for unnecessarily amounts of time. As you know, every single prisoner is like through like not just our laws. I can't remember what it's called, the Geneva Convention, where everyone's entitled to 1 hour per day out of that cell. And so people at the moment have been locked up for like 10, 11, 12 days without a run out at all.
Yeah, well, that's a human bill of rights, but Australia doesn't subscribe to it. Yeah, you know, I mean, there's been a big argument here that with Lucy Dudko, what they did to her, she went to New York to the Human Rights Commission there, who found that her rights had been abused, and the Australian government have they haven't compensated her in any way. They've just ignored it. And this is what I mean.
Yeah.
This is what we are like, our government is like. make our own laws up when it comes, because nobody really cares about criminals. I testified at the Royal Commission at Hate Division. It was a whitewash. They had a government stooge, Jangerson, sent in. He was a government man, and he gave very little in favour of prisons. Didn't believe most of them, and it was pretty obvious that Hate Division people were bashed. Everybody knew. Everybody in Australia knew people were bashed in Hate Division. But he had the hide to get up and say it hardly ever happened. Yeah, and then he used to do after dinner talks and said, as a matter of fact, they were never bashed. They were yelled at pretty heavy, but they were never bashed. So we had a Royal Commission because prisoners were yelling too hard at the prisoners, did we? Wow, I mean, it's just a distortion of history itself. And this is what happens. And the trouble is that 50 years down the track, you look at that Royal Commission and you see that nothing ever happened. H Division didn't get closed. It got closed and it got open again. Then they built that Jiga, and you saw what happened there. Electronic zoo where people died there. Look, prisoners are no better off, I don't think, and they're overcrowded, and they've shown tests with rats. If you overcrowd rats or anything else, then they act abnormal, and that's what happens with overcrowding in prisons. People, look, when they get locked down, they get up in the morning and, they had a visit come and sorry, we're locked down today, there's no visits. Sorry, we're locked down, you can't have a phone call. And their whole relationship depends on those visits. Their whole relationship depends on those phone calls. They're cut off from society. And they're entitled to these things, as you said, and yet they don't get it. And the simple thing is we're short-staffed. And this was happening before I got out, and now it's happening even worse. And I'm told by so many people that short staff is the main problem in jails now because it gives them an excuse to do what they want to do.
Yep. Yeah, so it's definitely, and that's a big problem, like the overcrowding and short staff. I mean, it's a mixture for just a volatile environment and the truth is, the privatisation of prisons, I think it's the same. Like, as you would know, they shut them down in Queensland. They were like, when they done the Royal Commission on that one. And I think that's something that needs to happen state to state, because it's quite obvious that the private prison sector in every single state is run the exactly same way, is all about profit and loss, and at the end of the day, we're just a number that makes numbers, and that's the truth.
Well, see, another thing that comes from that is what they've done in New South Wales. They've cut education. They've thrown most of the teachers out of the system because they want everybody to work. Now, the trouble is that education, you have a look at the Aboriginal. They had classes there that a lot of them are very good musicians, a lot of them are good artists, that they were doing great things with these things when they got out. Now, the thing is that most of that's been shut down. Then they brought in bloody clerks that probably got their degrees. They didn't have degrees anyway, but diploma, whatever they got, out of bloody cornflake boxes because they weren't qualified. And, when you're running a class for Indigenous people and you haven't got people of their own nature running those classes, you've got someone who doesn't know the culture, they're just not going to turn up, they're not going to go. They've closed down most of these classes, they've closed down a lot of TAFE stuff, and putting people in doing things like little bags and putting bloody sugars in them or coffees and this and just selling body bags, this, that, and all this mundane stuff that's not going to be any use at all to these people when they get out. You imagine you selling body bags, you get out. Now, what experience? Well, I haven't had a lot of experience, but I am good at selling body bags. Or putting sugars in bags. So the thing is that, and that gets down to the fact that they need to show a profit. So we need more industry. And what's happened in New South Wales? It's called CSI Industries. It's become like a giant octopus. It's got its foot in everything, and it's got a tentacle in everything. CSI Industries. And it's just to the stage where the prisoners used to have their own cookhouse. You'd remember that, and they'd make their own meals. They'd be great meals. You'd have a prison officer there, be the overseer. You'd have guys and you'd have really good meals. But now it's all bloody stuff that's pre-cooked, pre-heated. Then it gets cold, then it's heated again. It's got no nourishment in it, or no good, and they
no nutrient value.
Yeah, and they tell everybody, look, they get this. Look how well they are. Well they're doing. And of course, when you get some important person comes through to prison, what they do, they put on some special meal and take him over and give him a taste, and the governor will eat a bit too and say, look at this, good stuff. And that person goes away thinking, we're all doing pretty well in there, And it's always been that way. You know that.
Yeah,
You know that. They never take them where the bad
yeah,
parts are. They never
absolutely.
take them. Yeah,
100%.
yeah. And the crims they introduce
Yeah,
them
so
to, you can
it's exactly,
cut those.
yeah, that's right. I remember when I was at Port Phillip Prison and they brought Neil Mitchell through, and so we had a brand spanking new unit. They'd never had a new unit there since it was built, and
Yeah,
so they bought the news and that there Neil Mitchell after the new unit was built, and he was like, "I can't see why these prisoners are complaining. Like, have a look at this, flat
yeah,
screen
yeah,
TVs and all
yeah,
this shit.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that was one unit that housed 70 people, and that jail
yeah.
held 1,100 people.
Which show was
So
that?
like
Which
it was
one?
just they just
Which show?
that was Port Phillip, Port Phillip
Oh, yeah,
Prison.
yeah, right. Okay, okay.
So yeah, so when they made the new unit Fishburn, so they made and then they opened one before they opened the other, and but yeah, it was a brand new unit. Everything looked flash and looked the duck's nuts, but the rest of the prison like you wouldn't even house animals in there. Like it's
I know.
just red hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, uh, what we're getting at, we're getting off the subject a bit, but what we're doing here, we're getting it across to people that all's not good in the prison system, and what that means is that eventually society has to handle that. The people that get out, society got to handle the people that get out, and if they get out with chips in their shoulder, they get out where they're addicted to drugs. Um, then society itself's got problems because they're going to be the victims of these people getting out and who can't survive any other way. And the, the,
100%.
the people who run the prisons are well aware of this, and there's very little of rehabilitation going on, and that's a fact. That is a fact. We all know it, and so I get this across not just with the prison system, I get it across with the law system that I think the law does discriminate against the average people that come out from out west and haven't got much of a background. Those people do to get
Oh, of
discriminated
course.
as opposed to the people who got money and, they go to very good schools and universities and that they've got connections, their fathers have got connections, and you often see they'll get through the breaks. And that's a damn shame, And it makes a difference to their whole life. Their whole life can go
Oh,
one day.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
And it does. It does make a big difference, that the upbringing. But like you said, like it's a different upbringing for the Smiths and the Joneses that live on the north side of town compared to the people that were brought up on the west side of town in like the housing commission or whatever.
It's
Yeah,
the same in America, isn't it? It's the same in
it's a whole
America.
different, and it does make
Yeah,
it
yeah. It's the same in America, and the drug things is
100.
covered up. You go to a place like Dubbo and these places where I've been quite a bit, and you see in Broken Hill and that, and there's so many kids that are walking around on ice, bloody ice. I don't know if it's still that. A couple of years ago, that's what I saw when I went to these towns, and I don't know if it's still ice or if they're on something else.
Yep.
But I've been told there's still huge drug problems in all these towns, and they go into shops and steal, and the staff watch them steal, and they just grab them when they're going out and take it back off, and they don't bother prosecuting because the courts can't handle it, the police can't handle it. What are they going to do? They get a slap on the wrist anyway, and they haven't got the time to go
Yep.
to court and testify against. So they just run and riot, and there's no responsibility. These kids haven't got any responsibility. That they just don't know any better, and it's not like when we were kids, we knew if we did something wrong, we're probably going to get punished. If we took the risk, then we took the risk. I was always a risk taker, and when I left home, I got on the wrong side, and so I decided to become a bank robber. But these kids today, they wouldn't even think about that sort of stuff. It's just where they're going to get their next drug supply from. That's really what it gets down to. And a lot of them start selling
Yeah.
drugs.
Yep.
A lot of them start,
Definitely.
and they only sell enough drugs to keep themselves going. But and it gets so easy for kids to get supplies. You got people supplying school kids with it.
Yeah, and the regional areas are affected the most at the
They are.
moment. You know, you
They are.
see it,
Yeah.
the regional areas are the
Yeah.
most affected areas.
Yeah, and out west, in here in Sydney, New South Wales, out west, the western suburbs, right out, there's hardly so much unemployment and no jobs, and the kids hang around, and there's a lot
Yeah,
big, huge drug problem.
yeah. I
Well,
mean, look, as you would know, there was a time where you could say that with Melbourne too. You know, out west or even out north, even like it was pretty bad. But like as a whole, Melbourne's like it's pretty bad. It's like the crime capital of Australia now. It's out of control.
yeah, yeah. Well, I come to Melbourne to do tours and talks down there, and I usually go to Pendrey, so I also go to Geelong too, and I've been told the same thing by different people that live in these areas. They're saying, look, it's tough in most areas now. So it's a shame, and that's what it's coming to. And
Yeah,
I just think that, look, I'm not going to get in the immigration thing. I'm not going to get in the political thing. But here in Sydney, we have so many um, people coming in from other countries. And I feel sorry for people coming from other countries that need help. But the trouble is, there's nowhere for them to live anymore. There's nowhere. We've got so many homeless people. There's the price of housing's gone up, doubled, and there's no jobs. So we've still got all these people coming in. Huge amount of migrants coming in every month, and I really think
cheap
that
labour.
yeah, they have to start saying, look, we've got to put a stop to this because there's nowhere in Sydney, particularly, there's nowhere to live. E- Everything's so dear in Sydney. Accommodation's so dear.
Yeah,
And you go out at night and I go, if you come to Sydney, I'll take you around. There's so many young people that are homeless and old people homeless. Just that they're living on the streets. They're sleeping on footpaths. They're sleeping in doorways. Um, this,
yeah.
this
Same
never
here.
happened. When I was a kid, we never saw this. We didn't see this.
Yeah, it's a big problem here too. The
Yeah,
homeless, it's massive problem in Melbourne now, and exactly like you said, like people are just sleeping in doorways on park benches, like
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
the streets are flooded with it now, and it's just so sad to see because there's really nothing that like there's no services. There are a few services that help the homeless people, but really
Yeah.
there's nothing to help the homeless people get out of the homelessness. So you know,
Well, the trouble is the government too have cut down, and I know for a fact because I know people working at NGOs, for rehabs and all that. The government's cut funding to a lot of them. Instead of giving them up in the funding, they're cutting funding to these NGOs, and so they're the ones that used to help.
yeah,
They're the ones that funding getting cut, and they're relying on volunteers, stuff like that. And volunteer. So many people that volunteer and contribute are battling themselves to survive now. Things are getting tough for so many people. You know,
yeah, definitely, and it's all across the board now, isn't it? You know,
it is.
everyone's finding it
It is.
tough
Yeah.
to survive now. Everything's so expensive. You go into Woolies and see how much the
Oh, yeah.
fruit and
Yeah.
veggies are. It
No, I know.
blows
I
your
know.
blows your
Yeah.
mind.
Well, I've spent over 300 this week on groceries, and it used to be we'd spend about 150. And I mean it. Since COVID, our grocery bill has doubled. And I'm good with price. I dead set got a photographic memory on figures and that. And like, I'll give you an example. Coles tissues, Coles brand tissues. They were 99 cents for years. Now they're $2 or $1.90. That's 100% markup. That's on one
Yeah.
item, 100% markup. And I saw something and I laughed. I showed Gloria the other day. I said, "Have a look at this." They said, "What was it? 40% off, only $7.50." And I said, "Normally it's $6 anyway." Now it's got 40% off. And also, I don't know if you noticed with chocolates, everything, biscuits, everything's getting smaller. The packets are getting smaller. it's,
Oh
you know,
yeah, yep. Much smaller.
and chocolate's just so expensive now, just stuff like that, and everything's going up. As you said, the meat, fruit and veg, the whole works. And it's just
Oh yeah,
pensioners are really battling to survive. They really are, and that's why I'm still doing work
oh
myself.
yeah,
At my age, because we're pensioners and we're really battling to survive.
yeah. And even so, you know, like the supermarkets like Woolies and Coles and that used to say, you know, we're there for the pensioners that are that don't have much to live by and stuff like that. But even
Yeah,
now, all that's out
yeah,
the window. Like you
yeah.
used to be able to buy like $10 meal packs and stuff like that. You can't do that anymore. And
No, they just cut everything. You're right. The only good thing about I find with Coles is, and I generally shop at Coles, but they the half price, and you've got to get in and get the half price stuff. That's the only way that I can survive. So I might buy 6 of something at half price if I know I'm going to use it. Like,
yep.
washing powder, ridiculous, half price, you get it for 15, $16. But, I mean, I said to Gloria yesterday, well, so it's $32 and all. Since when has washing powder been $32? So they're telling you it's half price, but probably they're giving it to you at about the normal price, what it should
The
be.
normal price anyway before the markup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bloody rot, I know, but you've just got to,
And we're the criminals. We're the criminals.
yeah, I know. Yeah, well,
We always got the finger pointed at us. It's not fair.
no, it isn't. It isn't. I did 6 months for selling raffle tickets once. I was only bloody 18. Anyway, look, I guess I better talk about. You want to talk about the helicopter, and everyone likes to talk about it. I'm sick of talking about it, but I think I shouldn't mention it. You said you wanted me to talk about it, and what did you want to know about it?
So like we don't even have to touch on the helicopter one because, like you said, everyone knows about it. But like you were mentioned, and you have mentioned, I've been following your story for a while, and you've mentioned that you've got three escapes like that were successful escapes, but you had much more escape attempts. But you did mention before about an escape in Pentridge. If we can chat on that or something like that, that'd be great, mate, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I'll just say this: that I think I mentioned that I think fate has looked after me because I've been shot at by bank tellers, and they shot at us 3 times in a helicopter too, and they hit it but didn't bring us down, and just missed by about a
Yep.
quarter of an inch. A silicon cable which would have brought us down. So, but I'll say this about the helicopter because I think it's important that it was probably fate that I'm still here to be able to get the story out because I think it was fate that helicopter, and I've said this, and people don't like to hear it, the authorities, but I think they know it's true, that it was fate that it was going to happen. I'll tell you why. It's very hard, it'd be very rare to see a helicopter escape in Australia, and the reason being that prison officers are all aware of it. It's every criminal's dream to be able to get out in a helicopter. It's been even when I was a kid, people talk
Yeah.
about getting out in a helicopter. But every prison officer aware of it. Now, every jail I've been to in the country or anywhere else, that if a helicopter comes anywhere near, the screws on the tower are very alert. They're very alert. They're well aware of it. So if a helicopter did try and come, they'll shoot it down. They're not supposed to, but they will. The Geneva Convention said they're not supposed to fire it at aircraft, at helicopters over jails because it could be exactly a hostage thing. But they've ignored that in my case, and I think that's proven that they would ignore it. And they shot us 3 times. So you really have to find a jail where they're not even going to be worried about it. And the reason that they weren't worried about it, and that's when I had just happened to be in Silverwater before the Olympics were coming on. It was 99. And the Olympics were coming on in 2000 in Sydney. And they had a lot of flights coming over, helicopter flights every day, tourists coming over to have a look at the Olympic Village. And we were right next to it. And when I got there and I saw it, and I realised that, look at this. And I watched the prison officers, and there'd be 6 or 7 of them out in the oval. None of them took any notice after a while. It was so blasé because they might see 50 helicopters come over in a day. So I knew that if it was done right, a helicopter could come in, pick you up, and go out before they even got organised. And so that's how I worked it on the basis of that. But then we didn't know. So I said to Lucy, that's probably the only way I can get out because I had huge security on me because I'd escaped up in Queensland. I'd got a toy gun. A girl passed me a toy gun in the hospital, and and they had real guns, and I managed to hold them up. I had handcuffs on. I ran out and got away. We were out for about 12 months, and they didn't get me on that for about 7 years. And when they did, they couldn't charge me, and they're still dirty about that because what happened, they didn't take a warrant out for me. So I was illegally taken out.
Yep.
I was illegally taken out of hospital. So I didn't escape from legal custody. I wasn't in legal custody. So they were absolutely spewing about that too.
Yep.
So what happened is with this helicopter thing is that we didn't know anything about helicopters. I said we could get out, but we don't know anything about it. And then this is what I mean about fate. There was a con man. His name was Bennett. He got extradited from bloody South Africa to Scotland to New Zealand to Australia, all for con checks and stuff like that.
Yep.
And he landed in Silverwater when I was there. Now, the odds of that, because he just happened to be an expert helicopter pilot. So there he is in the jail that I'm in, but there were 20 wings in the jail I was in. Guess what? They put him in my wing. Now, that's a 5% chance. So if him actually being there, getting extradited to all those countries, then coming into Sydney, then coming into jail I'm coming, then coming into the wing I'm coming. But guess what? It goes further. They put him in my cell. Now, come on. What? And when it happened, I thought, they know what I'm going to do. They're mind readers. But I didn't tell anybody. It's only Lucy and I. We never told anybody. And I thought, how could this happen? Anyway, I worked on it, and he worked on me, and he said he knew who I was, and I told him I had money from the bank robbery because they never found the money from the bank robbery, and so we sort of conned each other, and I learned everything there was to know about helicopters, about a transponder, where it was. There's a silent alarm through the police. If a helicopter gets in trouble, that they hit that transponder. So Lucy did a trial run. She knew exactly where everything was. And it went from there. So went out on the rang her just before we had to make sure there are no lockdowns. We're talking about lockdowns, and it could have been a staff shortage. The week before, you wouldn't believe it, a poor young bugger, Lebanese fella, hanged himself. And we were going to do it that week, but we didn't. And he hanged himself. They shut the wing down, and they brought his parents in, and so that was sad. But so when I got out of the wing and knew that it was on, I managed to ring her and just for about 15 seconds said, look, I'm just going out for a run. I'll call you later. And she knew that I was out in the Oval, going out in the Oval. And because I had to check and make sure there were no lockdowns before, because imagine if she did it and I'm not on the Oval, you know. So it worked. That everything was fate, and it worked. And she managed to get there in time, and the helicopter didn't land the way it should have, because the helicopter pilot that I had, Bennett, told me he'd just swoop in and swoop out, but he didn't. He went around and around in circles, lowering himself, attracting attention to himself deliberately. And so they had time to get. Yeah, they got to the towers, in the tower, and they got the gun out and fired off 3 shots at us just as we were leaving. And I jumped on it, just missed us. So we're lucky there. Once again, I just think it was fate that that they didn't bring us down. It was fate that I had the helicopter. We couldn't have done it without the helicopter pilot that got into my cell. And these things, they're 1-in-1 chances, and they just don't happen unless fate steps in. I just think it's fate stepped in and said, well, it's going to happen one day, and we'll make it this time. And also down in Melbourne, talking about fate again, when I got down there for bank robberies, I was wanted for banks everywhere at that stage, in the 60s, mid-60s. And so I went from Sydney down to Melbourne. And what happened, I decided to escape from Hawthorn Court, coming out of court. And the police car broke down. The police were coming. So I knew I only had 2 prison officers to beat. They handcuffed me, took the handcuffs off when I was in court. So as I come out of court, they went to put the handcuffs on, and I whacked one in the gut, and he went back and went down. But I pushed the younger guy, but I got to the door and it was bloody closed. I had to stop and open it. And I was a pretty good runner. I had my runners on, suit, everything. I got out down across the street into the shopping centre, I was away. And this is where I've been about fate. I got it open and started to run down the stairs, and the young guy from the top of the stairs, tackled me. Now, they don't play rugby league in Melbourne. They play AFL. They don't know how to tackle there. This is in the 60s. None of them played rugby league. And yet they said to me later, you got the one screw who knew how to tackle. And I wasn't meant to get away. He's tackled me from the top of the steps, we were rolling around the grass. I nearly got him off. He was screaming out blue murder. And then the cops lobbed on the scene, give me a terrible hiding. And then I went down to H Division and got a very savage hiding down there. Nearly killed me down there. That was 66, June 66. So I decided to have another go in June 68. And what we do, we cut the bars. Me and two other guys cut the bars in this big circle, iron bar, which led us out to the door. And then I cut a hole in the door. And I slid my hand down through there and undid the bolt. I knew it was unlocked. Pulled the bolt back because I was too lazy to screw to lock it because they used to come around every hour, so they just couldn't be bothered locking it all. And then I knew. So I got that unlocked. Yep. Then my mate yelled out. We knocked up. We knew there was a screw upstairs. He had a gun. Yeah, he was armed, but he also had the keys to get out. So when he came down, I was ready for him, and he went for the gun, and I hit him with an iron bar. Now, people, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my life, violent-wise, but because really I'm not really violent, but he said he would have shot me. He went for the gun, and I hit him with the thing. I took the gun off him, and but guess what? When he fell to the floor, and I said, "Where are the keys?" He said, "We haven't got the keys." Because since Ryan and Walker, the Ryan and Walker thing, when they escaped, they increased the security, and they wouldn't give him the keys. They locked him in the wing without the keys, and somebody heard the noise and ran over and said, "John," and his name was John DeBoer. And I dived out, pointed the gun at him, and said, "Stay where you are, you're dead." And he dived to the right and ran out screaming. And I looked at my two mates. I said, "We're off. We're off." And they said, "Shoot the lock off." I said, "Look, that only happens to the movies. It's like, it doesn't work. You're not going to be able to shoot the lock off." And so we went upstairs and barricaded up, and we let the screw. He was okay. He had a few stitches in the head later, but we had a siege up there for about 4 or 5 hours. This is on the 16th of June 1968. And they brought in a SWAT team, 18 carloads of police, and they opened up an explosive place to get tear gas and everything. And there was a siege, and they threatened to throw tear gas. And I said, "Well, if you throw tear gas," I said, "we'll hold out as long as we can." I said, there's 3 dormitories up here and 2 down there. I said, by the time he's get in, some of these people are going to be dead. If you want that in your conscience, have it. That's so. I bluffed my way through, and so lucky I survived it. And in the end, we surrendered and went down, and I got 4 years in H Division, and that was it. 18 months extra, which the deal was done that it'd be kept in low court, and the screws were going to go on strike because they thought, if I went to the High Court, the Supreme Court, I might have got 20 years, 14 years, but kept in low court, you can only get 2 years. So, but they didn't go on strike because they wanted their wages. So that's it. That was the one that's the one that, I got away in Queensland with the toy gun, and I got away in a helicopter. But the one I remember most is that one at Penrith, where I probably should have been killed. There's no doubt about it. I was very lucky, and I think it was fate kept me alive on that night too. And, I look back on that and think, and now when you go down there 55 years later, or 57 years later now, but I went down there like a few years ago and went down, we did tours in H Division, and that place where I took the gun off the screw, that's now called Brewdog. It's called Brewdog, and they've got a restaurant there, and they sell beers and all that. And they take them over and they tell the people, "Look, this is where this escape." They don't mention my name, and they mention where the escape happened. And I go up there and have a beer with everybody. We have dinner there, and I think, bloody hell. I sit there having coffee and thinking, incredible that, because they had a Royal Commission. We had rights down H Division. I testified at the Royal Commission. I think, how lucky am I to still be to go down there 55 years later and look back at this and think, it definitely was fate that's taken a hand, and and left me here to write books about it and tell people about it, And it's something that it is part of history,
I
and I'm
think
going
so
to talk
too,
about
John.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, bro, like your story is one in a million, and I would say I'm a firm believer in fate too, right? Like you said before about being shot at and stuff. I've also I've been stabbed 7 times, and once right in the carotid artery. I shouldn't be here, and
Wow. Well, there you go. Yeah, it's
so
fate for you to be there. Yeah. It's
I
fate for you
believe
to
I'm firm.
for you to get there and be doing the
And
things you're doing, which you're doing good stuff with the podcast because you're getting the stories out, and that's great.
thank you, John. I really, really appreciate it. And look, I really appreciate you coming on my page. But like before we go, I know that you've got you're very passionate about helping the needy kids over in the Philippines. So if you just want to talk on a little bit on that, and maybe if people want to help, you can tell people how they can help and stuff like that. Or if you could do that before you go, that'd be awesome, my friend.
Well, yeah, I've been helping in Kyrgyzstan too. I'm not doing those kids anymore in Kyrgyzstan, but we did a lot for them, and Gloria went over there and saved them from going into homes. And there's one girl in Africa, but they're mainly in Kyrgyzstan, mainly in the Philippines, and most of my book money over the last 10 years have gone to these kids in Kyrgyzstan, the Philippines, and Africa. And I don't expect people to contribute to it. We've all got our own charities and that we do, but at least it goes direct to the kids. It doesn't go. And I would say that if they want to help, just buy some books because the book money goes to them anyway. And my book money, so if you can buy some books, you can buy books off me, which I think the best one is my life story, which virtually goes into detail about Lucy and the whole works, but my whole life story, everything that I've spoke about today is in there. And you can get that by going on to johnrkillick.com. That's my website. Or johnrkillick@gmail.com. That's my Gmail. Either one, if you contact me on either of those, you'll be able to get me and we can talk about buying a book. And that
All
way,
right. Well,
some of that money will go to these kids. So that's a good way of doing it.
yep. I'll put it. What I'll do is I'll put a link in the description of this video for the website and the Gmail account that you just said. So if people do want to contact you or buy a book, they can just click on that link and it'll take them straight to your website. Yeah, thanks for coming on, John. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, like I said, your story is so unique and I think, like you said, it's fate why we're still here and to be
I
able
think
to, tell our story and help the youngsters.
Yeah, it definitely is
Yeah.
fate. I didn't believe in fate, but there's too many things, and it's not just with me. With other people I've seen, people survived some things that they shouldn't have survived, and yourself an example of that. I just think that fate plays a hand in what. And if we're meant to go, we'll go. It doesn't matter what we do. If we're meant to go, we'll go. And if we're not meant to
Yeah.
go, then we're just going to be lucky. And those 9 shots that were fired at me, they all missed. And I just hope I don't want to be around for number 10, so I won't be doing anything to get shot at again, And look, I just really, I really think that I enjoyed this podcast and I think you're doing a good job and maybe we'll do another one down the track. I'm coming down to Melbourne anyway, so I might contact you. We might be able to have a coffee or something, okay?
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, you'd be able to come to my actual studio. We could do an in-person podcast if you like.
Where's that? Where at?
So I hire a podcast studio in Melbourne, so it's actually right in the CBD. It's pretty easy to get to as well.
Okay. All right, I mightn't have time this time because I'm coming down on the 8th to do a show at Geelong Jail Museum. But I think I'll be coming back for a book launch in maybe probably January. So we'll keep in touch.
No
Okay,
worries.
we'll keep in touch. So I'd love
Yeah,
that'd
definitely.
help me too. That'd help me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely, and I might even come along to your book launch, and I'll publicize it for you.
Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be great. We can help each other. All right.
No worries, mate.
Thanks,
No
Biff,
worries.
and
Well, there you go, legends. Johnny Killick, and an absolute gentleman of a man. And yeah, we're actually lucky there. He spoke about things that I didn't know he was going to talk about. And yeah, I felt really, really excited about that because I knew all of you guys would be loving to hear this stuff. So, and yeah, John Killick, what an absolute legend. So let me know what you all think in the comment section, guys. That'd be absolutely appreciated. I also tried to make this one a little bit smaller and shorter than the other one. And so this one's only an hour long. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, guys. And yeah, next interview, we've got Todd Carr, or Robin Two Tenors, he's known on TikTok, who's done multiple decades in prison in Sydney and was a very, very well-known Trump in Sydney. So that's someone who runs the yard. And yeah, that is our very next interview. So stay tuned for that one. And as always, don't do drugs and crime and you won't end up in prison. We out.